So next, I would like to actually introduce Srini. For those that don't know Srini, I'll give a little bit of the background. He's the president and CEO of the NTT Innovation Institute, which is a Silicon Valley-based R&D arm of the NTT Group, a global leader in information and telecommunications technology, fairly large company. I don't know what the revenue was last year. I think in 12 it was close to 132 billion. What was it last year? Around there? Yeah, okay. You don't count when you get to that high, I guess. He has 30 years experience as a program architect, chief development officer, CIO and CTO for several Fortune 100 companies, including IBM, HP, and Nationwide. He's a published author. He's got patents. He's been probably given numerous awards, both industry and IT specific, in the financial services and insurance area. But what strikes me most is how approachable Srini is. From the standpoint of providing advice, providing mentorship, leadership, and giving back to the community. I mean, to go to his schedule and fly in and make a stop here in Columbus within his schedule, I think just shows, you know, the type of character that he has and what he wants to do to try to improve the profession of IT and really make businesses more agile. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Srini.
Good morning. I've had 3 hours of sleep, so I should be good. Let me fire up the machine here. And get wired up. Because people who know me know that I walk around quite a lot, and you know, this doesn't work. So first of all, it's a pleasure to come back to Columbus. I think you know, Bart was too kind in the introduction. It is always great to come back. For people who know me, we lived here for 22 years. Moved to California about a year ago, and you know, so you can take me out of Columbus, you can't take Columbus out of me. Is that the way it goes? Yeah. So whenever Bart gives me an opportunity to come back in here, I'm delighted, and I'm happy to come in to talk to this team. So, and for the team from Nationwide, for those who you know, who know me, just stop by and say hi, please. I'd love to just say hi to you guys before we leave. So let me give you a little bit of background on NTT, just a very short thing. Bart gave you a good introduction. We're the largest telecommunications company in the world. It's a $132 billion company. And we spend about $1.2 billion on R&D every year. And the R&D ranges from everything from fundamental research on what's the next set of materials that are going to be used in chips, to if you're using HD video on your phone, the codec was built by the R&D team in NTT. So anything on communications, 4K, the 4K codecs came from our labs. So a very large investment in R&D. For my role within the company is I was hired about a year ago to come in to run R&D, but run it from you know, from Silicon Valley. Because one of the things about our company is, you know, it is the largest company that no one knows about. So we wanted to make sure that we started in a place where it's all about technology, and you know, go from there. So my focus for the last year or so has been on what we call applied R&D. So of that $1.2 billion budget, we take about 100 million or so, 100 to 150 million, to invest in applied R&D, because the rest of the money is for what's coming 5 years and 10 years from now. But we wanted to also see how we can commercialize technologies and bring it to market much faster. And that's what I'm focused on within I Cube in the Valley. So what I want to do today is to kind of give you an idea. So this is, I know it's a technical conference. Yesterday you had all the coders here, and today we've got coders, testers, pretty much everybody in the applications and infrastructure space in here. So this should be a high enough level that you know, I'm not going to be getting into too much coding in the session here. But what I wanted to do is probably spend a few minutes talking about where technology is headed, what's going on with technology today, and what we see happening in the next 2 to 3 years. A second part of the presentation is going to come back and talk to you about, as technology evolves, how does our interaction as humans change with technology and what's happening in that space. And there's a lot of really important things that are going on that you may not see or perceive on a day-to-day basis, but I wanted to highlight some of those trends and actually take you back to, okay, what does this mean for enterprises? And I didn't know we were going to have 200 people from Nationwide today, but I picked financial services as an example to see what could potentially happen in that industry. And then tried to come back in and connect it to what we do within, within the conference here. So I'm going to try to do that in about an hour or so. If you have questions, you could stop me in the middle or wait till the end and ask me the question so we can get started. So first of all, let me talk to you about where technology is headed. Works? It's a little bit stretched. All of my presentations nowadays are HD 16:9, so where the projectors don't match, you're going to see something stretched. So first of all, how many of you know what Moore's Law is? People have been saying for many years that it's dead. It's still about Moore's Law. Let me give you some statistics. In 1972, right, when Intel came out with one of their first chips, the number of transistors that you could put on a single microchip was about 2,300 transistors on a single microchip. That was a huge innovation at that point in time. To give you a perspective, if it's the Ohio Hall, like the one on State Street, the really ornate theater, if it's filled to capacity, it's about 2,000 people that you can fill the capacity in that thing. So that was 1973. Here's a visual. 2011, Intel releases the i7 core processor. Any guesses as to how many transistors that had? About 1.3 billion. To give you an idea, that would be like trying to fit the entire population of China into that hall. That's the level of change that's happened in microprocessors. And what that means is computers are getting faster and they're getting smaller. And that's a pretty important change that's going on because tomorrow's computer is not what you see today. Tomorrow's computer is a lot more specialized, designed to fit one purpose. It's supposed to do one or two things. And it is supposed to be able to interact with one another. So if people talk about mobile and the mobile revolution and apps on the phone and all of those other pieces. What's cool about apps? They're designed well, they're pretty small, and no matter who you get it from, it interacts well with the rest of the apps that are on the phone, right? So that's what's cool about it. Take that all the way through devices. When you start thinking about those ugly-looking thermostats that were there 20 years ago to what's out there today. For people who don't recognize the picture, it's a picture of the Nest Learning thermostat. But what's cool about Nest is it's built for purpose. It's designed to do one thing. It's designed to do one thing, and it's designed to do it well. It is highly interactive. Don't look for buttons on it because there are no buttons. It responds to voice commands. Or if you're talking about the smoke detector, what do people do when you have the smoke alarm go on in your home? You go up in front of it, take a towel or something like that, and try to get the smoke away, or do that hand wave in front of it. Guess how you shut off a Nest Learning thermostat, the smoke detector? It's the same way. How you interact with the device changes. And it's always network connected, which means it is smart and learning at all points in time. Compare and contrast that with computers that we deal with today that are designed to do multiple things, and they don't do anything very well. So that's a change. The second that's going on is that miniaturization and the power of computing is actually getting into every aspect of your life, whether you know it or not. Everything from wearables. The wearable seems to be the rage today. Everyone's got something or the other that they're wearing going on. My prediction and what we're focused on is this wearables market is very mature. There's going to be 2 to 3 more iterations before it comes in. So one of the things that I'm wearing today is it's from our NTT R&D research. this is a washable wearable fabric. And what it does is the washable wearable fabric with electrodes built in, it's real-time capturing my ECG and heart rate information. Since I flew in from Japan, I couldn't actually take it into Japan and bring it back in, but normally when I do these presentations, I'd flip over to the screen and you'll see 8:10 when Bart introduces me, my heart rate starts spiking, and it'll stay there through the whole, when I get up here, it'll stay there through the whole presentation. And think about it, right? It's unintrusive, it's real time, and imagine going into the hospital, after having a catheterization, or a cardiac surgery, and being able to walk away with wearing one of these, where you're streaming real-time information, all points in time coming in, right? And how it changes healthcare and others. So wearables are going to go through 2 or 3 more iterations of what you see today to get into this. The other thing that's changing in the wearable space, and with it becoming more pervasive, is APIs are becoming very, very much more. So how many of you have heard of a company called Mashery? Yeah, we see 1 or 2 hands going up. Mashery is actually, Intel just paid, I know the CEO of Mashery quite well. Intel just paid $300 million about a year ago to buy Mashery. And all they do is they take APIs, they socialize the APIs coming out of different devices. So if you actually own a Fitbit, and you want to connect in and look at the data coming in from other devices and other health apps on your phone and others, they syndicate the APIs and they make it available to you for you to be able to go build it. So back to this network-connected devices, what's happening is each device does something well in particular. They expose the API so you can integrate it to provide that overall experience. That's the way this is it's headed. Automobiles. It's just fascinating. There's a new technology that's come out that we were prototyping the other day. It's about directional sound. So because people are basically getting to the point where they're saying, okay, look, I can have a GPS that keeps talking at me saying left turn ahead and right turn ahead, and I'm actually looking at the map as I'm going through. Directional sound, and what we're doing with directional sound today is they've re-engineered the sound stack from the ground up to basically say I can split the same audio stream into 2 things. So when you now hear turn left, it actually comes out of the left side of your speaker. That left speaker's on your car versus turn right on the right speaker's on your car. The experience you have driving is a completely different experience. You get far less distracted driving and others. And so this technology is still evolving. We're getting to about, there's predictions around 50 billion devices connected on around the 2020 timeframe, and we're well on our way towards that. With that, what comes is how you interact with customers. How you interact with these devices actually does change. And this is important to everyone in here. It doesn't matter if you're in QA, if you're in developing applications or supporting infrastructure. Our entire life, and for people like myself, I used to use punch cards when I started. So I'm old. But most of you started with keyboards and mouse as the interface, and it hasn't changed for 30 years. It has not changed. When 2009, when the iPad and the 2007 when the iPhone came out, people got used to touch, and touch as a way to use this. But this thing has evolved considerably. Today, the interfaces that we talk about are voice and biometric. Like I talked about one of the biometric interfaces that I'm wearing. But voice and vision are becoming a big part of how we're measuring things. So another innovation in healthcare. This is about a year away from mass production, but there are working prototypes that we're building the APIs for. It's real-time blood sugar monitoring. Once you have, it's a pin that you can attach to something. So if you're a woman wearing earrings, this can be embedded into your earrings where you're wearing it all the time. And it's constantly measuring your blood pressure and blood sugar levels and sending real time to the phone. So when you have something, it knows what, you can actually see what it's doing to your blood sugar levels and coming back in. So there's no more pulling out your phone, launching the app, and telling it what you ate. this is real-time gathering that information for you to be able to build this. Gesture-based interfaces and haptic design has become pretty big as well. I think so. Bart and I have had this conversation in the past where, the thing we talk about today as a big advance in user interfaces is responsive design. And I'm just saying, responsive design is a good step forward, but it's really not. It's not a solution, because when you've got a device that's got the type of capabilities that you're carrying around, shrinking down something that was built for a big screen so that it shows up properly on a small screen, I equate it to email. I always make fun of email because it just said, how did you communicate 500 years ago? If you wanted to talk to someone, you wrote it down on a piece of paper, you probably attached it to the leg of a bird and had it fly away so that it reached to the other place. What do you think email is? It's the same thing. You're just sitting there, you're just having the computer carry it. So all we've done with something like email for all of these years is we've taken something that was designed and was meant for one particular purpose and just added technology to it. What we're actually getting to is really understanding how humans interact with technology and figuring out what's the best way to make that interaction happen. And that presents a very interesting possibilities. So here's something that I think most programmers, if you're not already looking into, you should be. So, Intel and Cisco and everyone talks about the Internet of Things. And this whole ecosystem of connected devices and how it interacts with one another, like there's a whole separate set of platforms evolving. How many of you have heard of something called Neutron IO? Not many. Okay, so it's an open source platform. And basically what happens is every device that actually is connected to the web and others has its own protocol for releasing it. What Neutron IO tries to do is they are actually building a platform that goes on each of these devices that detects how you can, how the device responds, and communicates that back to other devices in a way that's interesting. So the code, you write Node.js code for each of these devices, and then you write integration code to tie these things together. So the cool thing about this and where this is headed is I call it the Internet of Humans because it's always learning. One of my favorite services, I used it even in the morning today, is Uber, right? And I was told that it came to Columbus about 5 months ago, right? And everyone's, anyone I talk to is raving about Uber in the sense that, anytime you pull out your mobile phone and you want to go somewhere, it tells you where the cars are. It'll tell you how quickly they can get to you, and it's very, very convenient. They redefined that entire experience. What if I told you that Uber is kind of what we in the product world call is a minimum viable product? Right? Because it doesn't have all the features, functions yet, because Uber has the potential of changing the logistics world. It has the potential of, we're only about 2 years away, where you're now actually taking your phone and calling it, and a self-driving car pulls up. It's not even an individual, it's a self-driving car that pulls up that can take you to where you need to go. Think about the applications. People like FedEx is seriously looking at what they should be doing because of Uber, and that's what technology and how it interacts works together is driving things. So one of the byproducts of all of this technology and computing power everywhere is, I call it the digitization of the analog world. The world has been analog for centuries. We've slowly been digitizing that world. Right? Starting with the Library of Congress all the way up to the Human Genome Project in 2003, 2004 time frame to Netflix. So anything from your gene sequencing to videos to audio to everything that was all analog is now digital. And that has huge implications because you fundamentally, once it is digital, it is stored on computers, it's accessible from the cloud. So as long as you have network connectivity, you're able to get to that information at any point in time. And network connectivity has also kept pace with what's going on with computing. I'm pretty sure many of you know all of the terms up there, but networking has been expanding in both directions. It's been going, personal area, which is back to low energy Bluetooth. So if anyone's got iPhone 5 or a Samsung Galaxy 4 or above, you have low energy Bluetooth capabilities in there. That starts presenting things like, you have technologies such as iBeacon and others that have come out that allows you to know when you're standing next to something so that they can personalize content to be delivered to your phone. Right? So low energy Bluetooth on that end, all the way up to the other end, where in remote areas, for people who don't know what Google's Project Loon or what Zuckerberg has been promoting with internet.org, is Zuckerberg's thing. Let me just give you that piece. So today, sensors, I talked about sensors and how they're coming in. One of the areas that sensors are being used extensively is in agriculture. So in agriculture, you fundamentally have you have soil conditions, moisture conditions, what's the composition of the soil, all of that stuff coming up to basically say, is it the right conditions for planting seeds this week or next week or any of those things? They are specialized sensors that actually are connected using mesh networks. And all they do is they are able to detect what they do and talk to the next node out there. But how does that data get back into the cloud, right? And Internet.org, Zuckerberg's idea and what they're pushing is drones. So I have the ability to fly drones over fields, and when the drone's over, the network recognizes that you're there and it uploads the data. Or Project Loon with what Google's trying to do is they're thinking hot air balloons in areas in Africa and others where they're really tough to reach. So providing network coverage through balloons that fly at a certain altitude, providing broadband network access to areas that are very difficult to push infrastructure through. It's easy to do that. So you're starting to see with the networks and the computing power increase and the network capability continue to increase, what that gets us to, it puts us in a world where everything is accessible at any point in time. And that's important because what it starts doing is it starts blurring the world. What it starts doing is, it actually starts presenting new types of opportunities, and 3D printing is one of these. Like I was joking with someone the other day, where we pulled out a list of things from Gene Roddenberry's Star Trek I and Star Trek II, and said, how many of these have actually come to fruition? In the last 30 years or 35, 40 years that the series has been around, and it's a startling number. There's a lot of things that were talked about that are there. So how many of you recognize from Star Trek Next Generation, they had the place where they could go and order something for any food, like I need an ice cream sundae or something, and it materializes. At CES this year, they had 3D printers that would print cakes out. So they were handing out cakes that were printed by 3D printers. And the reason for that is, you can, on the one end, you've taken information on to how to make a cake, the right mixture, the right piece, and digitize that information. On the other end, you have the ability to take that and print it to a level of sophistication where, you're getting near real-time replication of what it was, what you digitized in the first place. And that's got some fantastic potential. So that's an interesting example. Here's a more real-time example. GE makes aircraft engines and everything else in between, aircraft engines to the smallest thing. But so on any aircraft, when you have one of these large engines sitting in, the brackets that hold the aircraft account for about 15% of the fuel drag. So the amount of fuel that's consumed because of the bracket and the airflow drag it creates is about 15%. So GE spends a lot of money re-architecting and redesigning those brackets every 10 to 15 years. The typical process that it takes, it's about a 5-year design period where they've got to go through stress testing and evaluate designs and others. And they spend millions of dollars doing that. So the last cycle was about a year ago, and the way GE ended up doing that was it was pretty simple. They went on to one of the crowdsourcing sites. They put the design challenge, they digitized the designs, they put the design challenge up. The challenge was offered for 10,000 bucks for the best design. Within about, I'm trying to get the numbers right, like about 14 days, they got about 72 designs from all over the globe. They picked seven. They paid out the $15K to two of the top two designs. And they had those top two designs printed using 3D printers in about 3 weeks. So the whole cycle for them took about a month this time around, and they spent less than 100,000 bucks to get that design done. And so that is kind of where this is headed, right? You know, because it is critical to think through it, because where we're getting to right now is because of that ability to go between analog and digital, that whole line is blurring. That line between analog and digital is blurring because you can actually go between one and the other pretty easily these days. And it's only going to get more and more easier to cross that line. And why that's critical is we've been used to, like, we're analog. Human beings are analog. And how you interact with technology has always been through some analog means. I got to type something into a keyboard that will get translated into digital to get in there. Now you're actually getting to a point where you have a different way of human beings interacting with technology. And that is a fascinating area, and we're spending a lot of time and money researching that space. So to give you an idea on this, let's talk numbers in terms of what it's doing to how humans interact with technology. These are numbers that you could pull from any place, but fundamentally, when you look at 1.28 billion, that's the population of China on Facebook. It's staggering numbers, and these are the numbers why WhatsApp gets sold for $18 billion, like, because of the numbers of people that they have and subscribers in. And again, don't ask me to justify why it was paid that much, because nobody can. But the reason people are looking at it is because it's because of the number of people who are connected, but more importantly, the second big law that's been consistent for the last 20 to 30 years, which is Metcalfe's law. Right? And Metcalfe, was one of the co-founders of the internet. Of Ethernet. Yeah, that's my 3 hours of sleep catching up. Co-founders of the Ethernet, and one of what he basically stated was the power of any network, is doubled, actually is squared for every new node that's added. And the simplest example, the example when he put the law forward was fax machines, where he said, when you're the first guy who went out and got a fax machine and plugged it in, whoop-de-doo, like, you had another device that was useless. When you had your friend get that device, then it became a little bit more useful. When you had two more people sign up, then it became more and more useful. That's the power of the network. And that's what Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and everyone are built on. It's the power of the network. You've got the numbers in the bottom, right? When you have one person join Facebook, not that much of a use. When you have 5 of your friends on there, 1 + 5 is 6, 6 squared, 36. Your power of your connection is 36. Given the fact that you have each person's got about 173 people on their friend list on an average, that equates to about 17,000 unique looks for Facebook. That's what drives that power. Why is that important? Because you can have all of this technology, but when you add the power of connected people and connected technology, now you start getting into real changes in how the economy operates. So how many of you have heard of the sharing economy? No? A few? 1 or 2? So this is fundamentally something that is changing. Don't ask me, ask my daughters. They'll probably know this better than I am, because I'm still analog, but these kids grew up digital. But fundamentally, what the sharing economy comes down to is, if everything analog can be digitized and it can be made available on a network where everybody's connected and there's so many people connected, why can't I share excess capacity? What's Airbnb? I have access, I have a room available in San Francisco. Most of the time it's not used at all. If I can rent it out and I'm connected to a network of people, my friends in Columbus, when they're visiting, they can let me know, as long as that meets the quality, you can come share that room. What do I get? I get better utilization of an asset that I have in there. What do you get? You get to use the thing without having to buy the asset or rent it. You're using it for a couple of days and you move on. There's several areas where this is actually evolving, and you're starting to see this. So there's, with Spotify and others, you're getting to even the digital media space where there's opportunities that are remaining. To areas such as on this chart, this is about 3-4 months old, but this is even getting revised right now. So if you look at the low interest and low prior success, and you see bicycles out there. Columbus, I think the bicycle sharing just started up, right? Again, what they realized with bicycle sharing as an example was when you put it into San Francisco, and when you put it into areas like, in San Francisco where everybody owns a bicycle. I don't even ride a bike, I've got 3 at home. So where everybody owns a bicycle and uses it on a regular basis, that model didn't work. What they're starting to realize is moving into other areas that have been more dominated by, the automotive and others. It's starting to pick up. So, even though this chart kind of says that it's low interest and low prior success is true, but the interest is high depending on which market you're actually putting it into. So you're fundamentally seeing an area where anything that you're talking about, any physical asset. What this whole place has got, what this whole setup has gotten you to is you can actually start sharing it. And that changes everything because the next generation of consumers that are coming up are what, this is Kleiner Perkins. If you ever get a chance to watch Mary Mierker talk, she is fascinating. Mary Mierker is one of the leading VCs in Kleiner Perkins, which is the largest firm out there from a VC standpoint. And she, give her credit for the asset-light generation, she coined the term. But fundamentally what it's doing is the next generation of consumers that are coming up, the current generation, the people who actually use digital, are fundamentally asset-light customers, asset-light consumers. They don't want to own assets. They want to be able to, if the sharing economy is enabled, I can actually use most of the assets and I can share it. With the primary objective being saving time, saving money, and saving space. Saving space is equally important, right? As I said, I'm the analog guy. Used to have 1,000 DVDs and 2 big bookshelves to store those DVDs. My daughter's kind of like, the heck, Dad? I have about 3 places to go get this thing right now. Why do you even need these things sitting around? Again, I'm in that cusp, transitioning over to the digital generation. These kids are not buying those assets. People are using Zipcar more. People are using, so why do I need to buy an automobile when I can Zipcar whenever I want to, right? What's the advantage of Zipcar? Well, daily I'm traveling 10 miles to work. I can get one of those small electric Nissan Leafs in San Francisco, but on the weekend I need to take my family over and I need an SUV. I rent it for that purpose. But I don't need the car all the time, so I can be asset light. Without a car, I don't need a garage. I don't need to all of the things that go along with it. So this is a fundamental shift, guys, and forward-looking companies are actually looking at this and trying to figure out how to deal with it. Patagonia is a good example. How many of you use Patagonia gear? If you're an outdoors person, you'll know Patagonia. Patagonia recently launched this whole thing because people can think about this and say, look, if everyone's sharing things, where's my new business coming from? So here's what Patagonia did. They've got this thing called Common Threads Initiative. The Common Threads Initiative is if you own Patagonia gear, which tends to be pretty expensive, and you want to move over the newer models and others, they've got a partnership with eBay, which allows you to either sell it or share it with other people. And they've launched that initiative. Doesn't drive away new sales. What it does is it opens up a completely new base of customers to their products that would have never bought Patagonia before, right? And even in areas like clothing, people are thinking through the sharing economy and where they're getting into. And so it's a fascinating development that's going on right now, which has far-reaching implications. It has far-reaching implications to car companies, has far-reaching implications to anyone who makes goods and services and big capital goods, and it has far-reaching implications for anyone who insures or provides money to buy these capital goods. So that's why financial services institutions and banks are going to be the first ones that follow as soon as this thing goes in. So the asset-light customers is a huge change of what's going on. So the connectivity, being asset-light, this whole concept of sharing is driving the power of the cloud and the power of the crowd, the way I call it. Today, crowdsourcing and accessing crowdsourcing across the cloud has become very easy. How many of you participate in or are a member of TopCoder? No one. Wow. How about Cloud Spokes? Well, you should be, guys. Go back in and please, I think this is Columbus. This is a matter of pride for me. People need to be part of TopCoder and Cloud Spokes. Here's why. It's a place where I can go put design challenges. So when I had to build my latest mobile app, we had to create a prototype for one of the clients coming in. We wanted to showcase something. We put the design up on TopCoder. And I offered a bounty of $5,000. I got about 42 apps submitted for the bounty in about 2 weeks. And we ended up picking one from the Czech Republic in Prague for that piece. And that was written by a kid who was 16 years old. Right? And that was basically what we ended up using for our, for this piece. That same app, if I would have had to build it, I don't care if I built it in Silicon Valley or I outsourced it to India and built it, $5,000, you're not getting anywhere close to it. And you actually got a kid who was actually a craftsman, because this is where craftsmanship starts coming in, who could put something together that was very customized, that delivered a specific thing for me. And when you look at TopCoder or Kaggle, does the same thing for data challenges. So when I have a major data science challenge where I upload a set of data, I write down the design challenge, and I have some of the best data scientists analyzing it for the bounty that I've set up there. Right? So I set up a bounty of 10K. I get some top-notch submissions. For 10K, I'm probably getting a data scientist for 30 hours. And they'll probably give me a report or something like that. Here, you have people competing to solve that problem for you, and they're doing this in their spare time. Some of them do it for a living, but people do it in their spare time. And that whole space applies everywhere. It's not just, I pick coding because of the audience, but if you look at Kiva and what they're doing with microfinancing and others, they're driving it in that space. I'm sure people in here are either part of Kickstarter or Indiegogo. Right? So if you're not, you should be. It's a good way for people to get involved in investing in what comes in the future and where we're putting money in. And so it allows you to be a venture capitalist of your own right and participate in some of the new startups that are coming in. So this is key, right? So you have a customer who's now used to a sharing economy, who's very comfortable with this whole model of crowdsourcing and is asset light. And you would think they're ready to take anything you give them, right? But the reality is, let's thank Apple for it, or at least I'm saying pretty much the entire the set of users and your business partners and everybody else have been Appleized. Okay? And here's my definition of Appleization. Any large company you go to today, they're going to talk about bring your own devices and how we should allow people to bring their own devices in. And I'd say IT is missing the point there, because bring your own device is at best a concept that's 7 years late. And if you're still talking about it, you're at least 7 years, probably even more late. Because the real change that the Apple iPhone and iTunes and the iPod before it, since about 2001 when Jobs came back to Apple, the real change that's happened is what's on the right-hand side. What we've all been accustomed to now over the last 3 or 4 years is a change in experience. It's a change in experience. People like Apple, you're actually going to come in and say, yeah, I know I've got the Android and the Samsung guys out there. They've been trying with 4 and 5, and you smile at the phone and it recognizes you and all of that other stuff. They're still struggling in the ecosystem space. They're going to grow. It's an open operating system, and it's better than a closed ecosystem that Apple's got. But the difference with Apple is the user experience, the experience that you get with that whole ecosystem. That's what has got the mass appeal. What that gets down to is it's design-centric. We moved from that being an appliance, that thing being an appliance, to something that's a fashion accessory right now. Right? So design matters. How it looks matters. That Nest, most of the guys who started Nest came from Apple. And they're now at Google. Right? So many of the guys who came, it's design-centric. Whatever you build has to look good and be easy to use. It has to be smaller and faster. And smaller and faster comes down to, I sometimes laugh when Salesforce.com gets up and says no big software, because first question I ask them is, what are you building? You're just delivering over the cloud. You're actually building you're building big software and delivering it over the cloud. If you really want to talk about no big software, look at your phones and see the apps out there. Every app that you put out there has a specific purpose, does something, does it very well, and when it needs other capabilities, it talks to something else on the phone to be able to do that. So you don't try to build a map application into everything you're building. You integrate with the map app that already exists. And the beauty with something like Apple is, because, and this is two ends of the spectrum, because they hold that ecosystem so closely, how the machine reacts to how you interact with it is consistent. In an open system, I can pretty much take the Android operating system and some user who builds a really cool map app says, oh, I want to do swipe down is going to mean something different than what every other app does. And you're open to do that. What that does is it breaks the experience for people who are now you have to be cognizant of the technology you're using. And that breaks the experience. And why that's important on the right-hand side is, imagine the answers that we in IT give our business partners to any of those questions. Nothing we do is small, and nothing we do is fast, right? And most of the times it's kind of like, hey, I built this system for you. The really usability, it just comes down to colors and fonts, and not necessarily, is this going to fit in with the way I get work done? And this is a big challenge, and that consumer and that business user, as you're trying to deal with them, that's something that has to be addressed. The last piece on this is, I couldn't finish it, I couldn't talk through this topic like this without touching on security. And even security is a very, very interesting space. Like, I've been watching this very closely, and we actually built a global threat intelligence platform, which I'll talk about sometime later, but it's been fascinating because this has been going in two different directions. One is where people are saying, because data that gets put on the web is persistent and it's there all the time, this whole concept of an ephemeral internet has emerged. So apps such as Snapchat, where you have a particular lifespan. Send a photograph, it stays for 2 seconds, and then it's gone. Right? And there are many apps that allow you to do something very similar coming up in response to data and privacy questions. That's one way of dealing with the challenge. A second thing that's happening is what's going on with regulations and this thing. So how many of you have been following what's going on with Google in Europe in terms of being able to pull data off? I don't know how successful that would be. I think a more successful approach is what Twitter is bringing out. So Twitter, with their release last week, came out with a mute button. So I have a thread going out, and I have somebody who's being pretty obnoxious on that thread. I can mute that person out, right? In terms of what you show and what you don't. And so the difference there is it actually puts the user in control of your data and privacy, and doesn't put the government in the business of trying to regulate what you do or don't do in this thing. So that'll be interesting to watch where it's heading, because it has major implications on how you build technology and how you deliver technology to people. So what does this mean for enterprises? So I've got about 50. I'm still good. What does it mean for enterprises? And again, you pick up any magazine. If you haven't read an article about it, it's there. every business today is a digital business. If there's any business in any industry walking around thinking they're not a digital business, they're probably not in business in a couple of years. That's kind of what's going on with them. It doesn't matter if you're in insurance, if you're in banking, or if you're making cars today. Because making cars used to be about building an engine and a drivetrain and a vehicle that could go from 0 to 60 in 3.2 seconds. And there's going to be a niche market for that in the future. But at this point in time, most car manufacturers are talking about the post-driver experience. It's kind of like if you're going to be spending most of your time in the back seat, what is your experience going to look like? And at that point in time, what the power of your engine and all of that stuff doesn't matter. So cars are becoming, so all of these guys are investing a lot of money and time into what technology that goes in and how does technology interact with humans working. So this fabric that I talked about, we're actually talking with it's highly confident. We're talking to a couple of different auto manufacturers about putting the fabric on the seats. So in terms of measuring, biorhythms and others to be able to pull things in, and so we're planning the in-car experience as to what the cars are going to look like when you're no longer in the front seat and you're in the back seat, most of the time with being self-driven in that place. So it doesn't matter which industry you're in, you are a digital business. You absolutely are a digital business. And the guys who actually have mastered it are this. Like Starbucks, if anyone says they're a coffee company, they're missing the point. They're actually an information company. They actually do a fantastic job with information, of being able to use the information that they get and deliver a product that the client needs. Like, for them, giving you, I can't even pronounce the 5 or 6 things that you have to say before you order a drink. For them, that is not considered as extreme personalization that I have to standardize. They look at that as, I'm delivering a different experience, and I can do that because of my knowledge of technology and how I've actually incorporated it into how I do business. And that is critical because there are both examples of startup companies and established businesses who've made that transition. And there's 3 of them, right? So one, I'm sure you know the company on the right-hand side. But I don't know how many of you have heard of Frog Design. Frog is a company out of San Francisco, and they spend all of their time on how people interact with technology and how do you build better interfaces with technology. And that's their primary design. So the Disney is rolling it out this year. When you go to Disney theme parks from now on, you're going to get a wearable, and the wearable actually keeps track of where you are, allows you to pay for stuff, allows you to know what the wait times are through haptic response on your hand. It is a very well-engineered piece of thing that actually fits in with the overall experience. And as you're walking in, how you scan in and all of that stuff has been changed. So here's a company that has figured out the experience is important, and they incorporated technology into that entire stream. And Frog was the guys who designed the band for them. And they spent a lot of time they're actually helping us with our center. They're actually a very, very well-known firm. They're up and coming. Some of the industry's leading thinkers work at Frog. Company in the middle, if you've bought eyeglasses anytime in the past year or so, Warby Parker actually is changing that model. Today we're going into a Costco or LensCrafters or wherever it is, I can fundamentally, if I'm in Warby Parker, I can go in, I can upload my image, I can actually look at how different frames look at, on my, pick 4 or 5 of them, they'll ship it to you for free. You try it out, and then you pick which one you want, and then tell them I want this frame, and here's my prescription, and it comes to you, overnight, right? So they ship it very, very quick. Warby Parker, again, takes that experience, that you thought was always, it had to be just an analog experience, and they've converted it into a digital experience for their customers. And this is, all of these are critical because where we're getting to is if you put everything that I was talking about together, everything from smarter computers to how we're changing interactions to asset-light consumers and others, what it comes down to is let's start thinking about financial services. Liability insurance, automobile. Well, let's start home. Home insurance. What does home insurance mean in an asset-light world? What does home insurance actually mean in a world where I am connected and sensors are actually connected to things where I can warn you, I can actually tell you about fire dangers, all of those other pieces? What does it mean? That's an improvement. Like those are things that insurance companies have to get better at. But you really want to get to the point where a lot of what you do with renters insurance, with all of these things, all depend on people owning assets. When people don't own assets anymore and they're actually using it on demand when they need it, what does it do to the fundamental model of insurance? And the same thing happens with automobiles, which is actually for most insurers is the most profitable business. Homeowners is a loss leader. People are in homeowners because they want to sell more auto. There's no insurance company that makes money on homeowners. And homeowners, the homeowners insurance is one piece, but auto, which is the cash cow, is even a problem right now. Because when you get to self-driving cars, and Nissan and Google have basically said they're 4 years away from mass producing these cars. Okay? And Google's got the bandwidth to basically say, I'm giving you this car, and that car is an entire experience that you get. Today, when you buy a Tesla, you're wireless connected to broadband wireless for 10 years. Right? I don't pay a single thing. So when I got mine, I'm pretty much connected to the web. And I'm 100% mobile. It's 100% connected to the web all the time, because Tesla bundled that into the car that they were selling. How long do you think it's going to take Google to say, I'm going to build a self-driving car, which I know is going to reduce the number of accidents. There's no distracted driving. There's none of that piece. Why do I need an insurance company in the middle? By the way, my actuarial and my analytics capability are much better than any other insurance company out there. Why do I even need an insurance company in the middle? Why can't I bundle insurance in, not insurance or whatever the concept of insurance is, with this piece? And you take it one step farther and say, well, what if I don't own a car and I've got Zipcars and others? And so Zipcar, today at least the insurance companies are looking at it saying, at least I get a commercial policy out of it. Zipcars and Hertz and others, as they kind of change their vehicles to be more self-driving and autonomous driving cars, you don't need that also, right? They're the first guys who are going to go in and take that whole concept of buying insurance from a middleman away and actually let it be embedded into the product that I'm buying, right? So that's a pretty big change. It's a huge change for people. It has downstream implications. So if you're a bank, you're not that far away, right? So from actually the last 4 or 5 years have hurt banks, because even though money is being made available to the banks, their lending things have become so onerous that it's very difficult for anyone to get a loan. So fast forward to an asset-light generation, I don't need a loan. And when I need one, I can crowdfund it. So with Start, I can actually go crowdfund it. So your loan instruments, the things that banks are able to charge fees on, which is what keeps them running, is again a fundamental thing that gets challenged as you work through it. So there's a lot of people. If you look at forward-looking banks, Amex is one of them. Amex is spending a fair amount of time on what is this environment going to look like. And if you see what American Express is doing with their whole membership, where they're taking it, and how they're interfacing with social, what they're getting into, you can see a strategy. I don't think they have the answer yet, but they have tried out some very innovative things in that marketplace, rather than just rolling out the next mobile app. That's an incremental thing they have to do. But in terms of products that they're rolling out, so that whole blue card that they did with Walmart is a good example. So for people who don't have checking accounts where I can go get that cash card at Walmart, again, it's got a niche, but it is something that's volume. But everything made possible by technology, and what's going on. And I'm not even going to talk about Bitcoin, because I could go off on a whole tangent on that. But Bitcoin is real, guys. It's going to happen. It is going to happen. Why do I need a middleman in this whole thing when I can have a much more secure version of that currency that's traceable and others? It's a question of how quickly is the government going to catch up to the regulations. It will happen. I think the governments are moving faster than many industries these days. Like, as I pointed out earlier, there are 5 states that have approved self-driving cars right now. Ohio is not one of them. Michigan is. And California, Nevada, there's 5 states that have approved self-driving cars. That's regulators getting ahead of it, approving cars which are not going to be available for another 2 to 3 years. So regulations things are catching up, and people are going to make those changes. But Bitcoin is one that we're going to have a lot of debate, but I'm predicting that in the next year or so, it's going to start becoming more and more mainstream. It is going to get more and more mainstream. And when that happens, a lot of the instruments that people have been built, the banking instruments that are built on, like, you have to start thinking, banks are working pretty hard to figure out how they make money in an environment like this. How they make money in an environment like this. And everyone's worried about that current generation of consumers that are coming in. They're not worried about old guys like me. That it's too late for us. But it's the next generation that's coming in. That's what they're worried about, because when you can actually take this, and I'm building mutual funds and retirement plans. Retirement plans for what? That's assuming you're accumulating wealth in a certain way that I can give to you in a mutual fund that you can charge me fees for every year. When you have direct access to markets, when you're talking about electronic currency, that entire value chain of financial services is ripe for disruption. And it is happening in many areas. You're starting to see some of the players come up. It's going to happen in a big time over the next I'd say 5 years. And the other industry that is going through that same amount of change is healthcare. Forget all of the noise and things around Obamacare and others, but healthcare, the revolution in healthcare that's coming is pretty big. I think anytime you take a particular resource, whether it's doctors or medical information, and that was pretty much contained in one place, and you've now made it more available and more accessible to people, that industry is ripe for disruption. So when you start thinking about, there are so many primary care alternatives that have come up right now that whole, I've had several doctor friends that have said, if you're going to become a doctor, you don't want to be a primary care physician or an OBGYN, because there's no point in being in either of those things. Those 2 areas are at a point where it's been commoditized from a doctor. They are, after all, spending 8 years getting a degree and paying a lot of money to become a doctor. But those are commoditized to the point where I can actually go in and have different alternatives for healthcare. The other area that, again, I'm not going to spend too much time on it, is the whole concept of social aging. By 2040, it's somewhere close to 60% plus of the population is going to be what's considered old in this country. And how you grow old, and how you actually want to stay connected in that world and others change. So this whole merger of social networking, aging, caregiving, that is changing, because today, unfortunately, one of the things that happens is parents grow older, you're looking for homes for them to go put them in homes, when they had to get taken care of. How does that completely change in an environment where I can provide that social connection in a personal living space, right? With real-time access to data that's coming in, and there are several startups that have come up in the last 2 years or so that are focused on that piece, and there's a lot of really cool work coming up in that space. And that's, again, the healthcare industry is one of those that goes in for changes. So, what does it mean to the people at the conference, right? And I think software craftsmanship, and that was, I know it's yesterday's session, but software craftsmanship is not just alive, it is slated for a big comeback. Back in the day when I started learning computers, I had to learn octal and binaries to code on switches. And that was craftsmanship, because there was no standardization. There's this whole thing around, I don't know how many of you have heard the saying, you standardize what you want to fossilize. So if you want to fossilize it, then standardize it and it'll happen. We've gone through that with software for many years, and what this whole new environment is coming into is it's moving into a space where that craftsmanship is back in again. I know there were a couple of sessions on GitHub yesterday. If you pull the data from GitHub, there's no less than 12 programming languages today that make it past, like, you know, what's called like the minimum for it being a viable programming language. So only 10 years ago, we were struggling as to how we take COBOL people and transfer them over to Java. And today, there's 12 of those things, and each of them for a specific design purpose. And what we have to start doing is we've got to start rethinking how we manage IT. And I say we because I'm front and center. You know, I'm like that hair club for men advertisement. I'm not just the president, I'm a member as well. So like I've done my share of standardization, I've done my share of so it's back to software craftsmanship is relevant, and how do we get our workforce into this space? I think it's a pretty exciting thing, because when you standardize something, that's what made it possible to outsource those things. Because when you commoditize it, standardize it, then it becomes, I can get a machine to do it, or I can get you know, a cheaper costing resource to be able to go do that piece. Craftsmanship, on the other hand, requires like an attention to detail and a level of skills that I think is pretty exciting if you're a programmer or a software quality tester or anyone coming in, which is actually pretty cool in this space. A second thing that has to change is this whole concept of coming to today is this business agility. And I know people have had different definitions of business agility. And what I keep talking to people about is, look, I can give you the PowerPoints, I can give you all of the stand-up presentations around it. Business agility is pretty simple. You don't really, whether it's at an IT team level or, you know, the conversation I'm going to have in a couple of hours back in my old haunting grounds at Nationwide, or if it's done at a business level, what you're going to do is you have to encourage experimentation. You have to figure out how you can set up small experiments and be able to try those. Amazon is that successful because whether you know it or not, they run close to 70 to 75 experiments every single day on their website. You just don't know it. You know, what they're doing is they're changing one thing or the other to see how you're responding so that it makes it into their next version of this thing. So they're at a pace where they can run 70 to 75 experiments. And of those 70 to 75 experiments, do you know how many of them fail? Most of them. Because it took them 2 days to put this experiment in place. It's not that big of a write-off. If it is a 5-year multi-state rollout program, then failure costs are pretty high. You know, so if you encourage experimentation, the next one comes automatically because this cost of failure is not that high, and you want people to. It's like our interview process at my new company is we ask people to talk through their failures and what they learned from it. Because if somebody comes in and says, I haven't failed before, I want them to gain that experience somewhere else and then come to us. So we want people to be ready with failure. We want people to be able to accept failure and be able to say, like, look, I learned from it and I got better from it. So that's the second piece of trying to get to be any team or any organization faster. The third piece is the most toughest thing to do. It is giving people time to think. And this requires a change in how people are managed. Right? You know, it's about, you know, anyone who comes up with a new idea didn't come up with it in the middle of some major deadline. In the middle of a deadline, you're doing whatever the heck it takes to get that deadline met. You're not coming up with great ideas, or you're not coming up with ways to make things better. Agility requires time to think, and you need people to be able to provide that. The fourth is the creative, like, you know, you'll see some overlaps between this and innovation. I think innovation is an overused term at this point in time. Everyone talks about innovation, and there's about 100 people who are going to have different definitions on it, and I have one as well. But when you get into creativity and playfulness, that's so important. One of the things that I'll show you at the end here is a video of a new center that we just built. And it'll show you what we tried to do to introduce that creativity and playfulness. Cross-functional interactions, again, any team that you're building right now having people from multiple domains. So this is back to, you know, if you take a look at IT, we take all our PMs and put them in one pool, all our developers in another, all architects in another pool, and all QA people in a separate one. You're not going to get any great ideas with that. You're going to get more silos and more standardization. Because what you want to do is, because you want to do your piece well, you're going to try to standardize all the inputs and the outputs coming out of this piece. So you're fundamentally fossilizing something that you have to make work much faster. Cross-functional teams, on the other hand, actually this is what Agile and all of the guys who've been talking about Agile for a while will tell you. And then the last piece is that willingness to change. And I think it starts back to, it's a full feedback loop, because if you've got experimentation in your DNA, then you'll be more likely to change. And that's that feedback loop we talk about. So craftsmanship, agility, and the last piece is, this is something that I think is very important that all of us spend some time thinking. If you have time this year for training, go do a design thinking class. Go focus on human-centered design, because the one thing I've hopefully talked about all through is it's about the experience that you deliver. It's about the experience of how you use technology. So this is not about responsive design or automated software QA or any of those things. But human-centered design, what it comes down to is, I'll give you a good example. You can read the slides yourself, but I'll give you a good example. One of the best companies, actually, if you want to take a course in design thinking, the company you should take it from is IDEO. It's out of Palo Alto. It's like they're neighbors to us. They invented design thinking. They talked about it. So here's one example of what they do. They were brought in to improve the hospital experience. So when you're checking into a hospital, it's a pretty bad experience if you've had the unfortunate thing of having to check in. And there were several consultants that actually tried out how to redesign that experience. Here's what IDEO did. They finally came. The third attempt, they came to IDEO for it. They brought their designers in. They put GoPro cameras on those designers and walked them through the entire process. Everything from walking into the center to being admitted and put in a bed. And they videotaped this thing for 48 hours. And so anyone want to take a guess as to what 42 of those 48 hours was? Waiting was a very good guess. That was second largest. Like, you know what the topmost one was? They were in a bed staring at the ceiling. That's what the GoPro camera was capturing, because it was fundamentally on there. Because now that I've gone through the wait and I've gone through all of that stuff to get into a bed, if you're a patient, you're spending the next number of days just staring at the ceiling. So they go back and redesign that entire experience to say, what is the best way that we can go do it? So it's back to, they look at, is it a viable thing that we can do? Yeah, when you start thinking about patient care and others, it's a viable thing. Technologically, is it feasible? So what they did was, in different stages, they ended up putting in technology where it mattered, design where it mattered, to be able to deliver an end-to-end experience, all the way down to desirability. So when this was actually built, people were much more happier. Patient satisfaction rates in the hospital went up, and others. And so what it comes down to is, the word you'll hear IDEO use is empathy. It's like, if you're going to build a system that people are going to use, you have to be able to empathize with them. And putting that camera up and putting yourself in a patient's shoes allows you to empathize with that patient. So it's the same thing. If you're building an application for one of your users to use, try using it. Actually, even better, get up and go to where the users are using it and try to use it in that context. And then now talk about, is responsive design a good thing or a bad thing? Because you'll get responses from your users when you actually are seeing them use the technology. But if you have time this year for training, I'd say the one class anyone has to go take is a human-centered design class. Because I think that makes all of us good technologists. And it actually sets us on a path of creating the ultimate goal of technology. And this is my, I'm on the last leg of my career. So the last leg of the career is, we've got to get it to a point where technology really does matter. I don't want to build the next iteration of email. I want to build something that changes and replaces that. And that's kind of where we're coming from. And so the last thing I'll just show you, if I can get up. Let's see if this thing scales. Okay, we just launched a new customer experience. So we just launched a new customer experience center. A lot of the things that I talked about, we actually put it into, so the last 6 months of my life have been spent building the center and putting the technology into the center. So it's, the 2-minute video doesn't do it that much justice, but my request for anyone out here is if you're in the Bay Area, if you're in the San Francisco, Palo Alto area, just ping me and let me know. I'd be glad to welcome you in. You can kind of see a lot of what we're talking about real time. We've built this. We built it for our clients to come in to take a look at. But let me show you this. This will be on the website. I'll let you guys look at it later. But what we did was we took a lot of the technology and built it into the overall experience of people walking in. So from the minute you walk in the door, it's been we just got written up in TechCrunch also, where it's probably the most advanced center in the Valley. But my goal for the center was if anyone notices the technology, we've failed. Right? So you're going to be walking into one of the most sophisticated technology pieces, but it should appear to be, technology should be invisible as we built it. So we actually went and put a lot of time and effort into launching this, and we just launched it the first week of April. And so if any of you is in the Bay Area, I was trying to get Bart to come visit us the last time he was up there, but I think he's going to make it the next time around. But with that, I'll stop. I think I used up my time, Bart, or do you have any time for questions?
We should at least open it up for, if anybody has a few questions, we'll take 2 or 3, maybe 4 questions quickly, and then close down the session. Anybody have a question? And if there's no questions, there's one.
So what do you see happening in the food and grocery business related to innovation?
Well, the retail space and the food and grocery business, when you look at retailing, so you have people like Tesco, who's pretty much been on the forefront of what we're doing. So this whole low-energy Bluetooth technology that I talked about is a huge boon for retailers, because I can actually provide product information exactly at the point in time where the customer is looking at that product and be able to deliver that. So you're seeing a lot of beacon low-energy Bluetooth technology make it into stores. A second piece of what's coming in is the ability for you, from a sensor standpoint, to kind of detect freshness of food, all of those things. That is a second piece of when you put things on the store, on the shelves and others. It's a big area where people are actually looking at what's the right time to have things on the shelves, what temperature they need to control it, and others. And so, food and grocery on the retail front, there's a lot of innovation going on, and but in the broader food chain, if you look at it, I think one of the most successful areas that's coming up is this whole grow local, buy local. And that grow local, buy local is fundamentally driven by technology and how you use technology. And I know it's for some retailers who've built for some food stores who've built the business on being able to ship goods from one part of the country to the other, and it could be a challenge. I think a lot of people like Whole Foods and others have figured out how to leverage that grow local and buy local piece using technology, and they use Whole Foods is one of the best users of advanced tech that's coming out. I can see it evolving even further, because you'll start seeing the intersection between food and health and wellness, right? And you'll start seeing that merge even more as we go forward.
We'll take one more question, just given the time constraint. Here's one more. I'll run it.
So with all the new development with graphene and carbon nanotubes coming out, how do you see that changing the way that microprocessors are developed and how technology is going to grow and evolve using all these new materials coming out?
Yeah. So the whole The area that I didn't spend time on was a lot of the computing, and the core processing technology. The area, the area that I'm actually really excited about is there's some core research. Like, we're doing research on things like new materials and nanotubes and how they can actually start improving time to move data from one place to another, but you've gotten down to such a small, compact space that there's a lot of limitations you're running into. So one of the things that is very fascinating is all computing is built on the von Neumann architecture, right? Nothing has changed in terms of how that's evolved. There are people who are now challenging that and saying, I don't have to build things that way. Who said that the computer architecture at the core has to look like this? Can we redesign it? There's a company that we work with called UpThere, and what they're doing as an example is UpThere is rethinking storage completely. If you think about how storage works, the architecture is in terms of storage and how mobile-based storage works, it's built and it's only been extended for all these years. They're rethinking that whole space so that that works much more efficiently. So you really don't need to put anything more on your phone. You can be searching real time on the cloud to be able to do that. So essentially what they're doing is everyone's going back looking at it. They've pushed the limits in terms of physics as to what you can do with the processor. That we still have some headway to go. I don't think it's dead yet. But that's incremental improvement. I think there's a lot more effort that's being put on radically redesigning how those technologies work. So anyway, I'm here for a couple of more hours. I should be back in the afternoon, but thank you for your time. Bart?
No, just thank you.